Now, what we do on the geostatistics panel becomes very important. Notice the smooth factor. If you know anything about geostatistics, you know that there is something called the variogram. If you have enough data, you can calculate a variogram which determines the correlation length, or how far apart data should be for it affects each other. If data is very close together, it should correlate well. If it's very far apart, there will probably be less correlation. An interesting contradiction about variograms, however, is that if you do not have enough data, you can't use them. If you do have enough data, oftentimes you don't need them. With 5 data points at the 5 wells, we do not have nearly enough data to calculate a variogram. If we make a few assumptions, however, we can accomplish much the same thing. We can assume the data correlates at a great distance, the data is smooth, or we can assume very little correlation, in other words, the data is not smooth. We do this by assuming a smoothing value of 1.9, which would indicate infinite correlation length, or a value of 1.1, which would indicate very little correlation. Or we can pick any value in between. Let's try it. First, we'll try a value of 1.1. Notice that we get small islands around the wells. This is because the data is not correlated well between the wells. In other words, there's very little correlation between the well logs. Now we will try a different interpretation based on a long correlation length. We'll use a value of 1.9, or an infinite correlation. What we get is a completely different interpretation. Which of the two is correct? Well, from the data at hand, I can't tell you. Either interpretation is equally likely statistically. Maybe the log analyst can give you some suggestions by implying whether he sees correlation between logs. Other than help from this quadrant, it might be wise to run both extremes to see what effect it has on the model. In other words, do a sensitivity to correlation length. We'll save these values and then try something new with the faults.